Welcome to the channel NUMIS Hunt USA. And before we dive in, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to reveal today is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about everyday pocket change. And I mean that with every ounce of seriousness I have, because we are talking about 5 Roosevelt dimes, yes, dimes, tiny little 10-cent coins that most people drop into tip jars or forget at the bottom of old coat pockets. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand why certain versions of these coins have made ordinary people extraordinarily wealthy. And I promise you, the stories get more unbelievable with every single coin we cover today. So do not touch that back button, because the coin we are saving for last, the one we will reveal at the very end of this video, is so jaw-dropping, so absolutely mind-bending in its value, that even veteran numismatists, people who have spent decades studying rare coins, have described it as the holy grail of modern American coinage. But we are starting right now with a coin that is already worth a staggering fortune, and trust me, you are going to want to check your change after this. The 2012 P. Roosevelt dime, a coin that on the surface looks like nothing more than the most ordinary, forgettable piece of American currency ever minted, a tiny silver-colored disc with the profile of Franklin D. Roosevelt pressed into its face. The same design that has appeared on the dime since 1946, the same coin your grandfather probably used to make a phone call, the same coin children drop into gumball machines without a second thought. And yet, there exists a version of this coin, a specific, incredibly rare variant of the 2012 P. Roosevelt dime, that has been valued by top-tier numismatic experts at an almost incomprehensible $15 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $15 million. For a dime. For a 10-cent piece. Let that sink in for just a moment, because I want you to really feel the weight of what that number means. And I also want you to know right now that the coins coming up later in this video are going to make even this extraordinary figure look modest by comparison. So stay locked in, because we are just getting started. Now, to understand why this particular 2012 P. Roosevelt dime could carry such an astronomical value, we have to first understand the world of mint errors, die varieties, and the almost obsessive passion that drives serious coin collectors to spend fortunes chasing down these tiny metallic miracles. And it all begins in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, home of the United States Mint's oldest and most storied facility, the very mint that strikes coins bearing that simple letter P on their obverse. And in 2012, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at full production capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of dimes to satisfy the nation's commercial needs, machines running day and night, dies pressing metal blanks at extraordinary speed, quality control teams monitoring output. And yet, in the middle of all that industrial precision, something went wrong, something slipped through, something escaped into circulation that was never supposed to exist. The world of mint errors is a fascinating and deeply complex one, and the 2012 P. Roosevelt dime, that commands $15 million, is believed to be the product of a catastrophic and extraordinarily rare combination of minting anomalies that came together in a perfect storm of numismatic rarity. Experts who have examined specimens of this coin have pointed to what appears to be a dramatic double die obverse, where the working die used to strike the coin's face had itself been struck with a misaligned hub not once, but in a way that created a pronounced and unmistakable doubling of Roosevelt's portrait, the date, and the inscriptions, a doubling so severe and so visually dramatic that even a casual observer with no numismatic training could look at this coin under a magnifying glass and immediately recognize that something is profoundly different about it. But that alone, as remarkable as it is, was not the only anomaly at play here, because on top of the double die obverse, certain specimens also display what numismatists have described as a dramatic off-center strike, where the metal blank, the planchet, was not properly centered beneath the die at the moment of striking, resulting in a coin where Roosevelt's portrait is dramatically shifted, where portions of the design bleed off the edge, and where the resulting visual effect is something that looks almost alien compared to a normal dime. And when you combine a severe double die obverse with an off-center strike and a pristine, uncirculated surface condition, you have created something that the numismatic world has almost never seen before, a coin so far outside the bounds of normal production that its rarity becomes essentially incalculable. And rarity, in the world of coin collecting, is everything. The value of any collectible is ultimately determined by the intersection of rarity and demand, and in the case of this 2012 Roosevelt dime, both factors are operating at their absolute maximum. Roosevelt dimes have been collected passionately since they were first introduced in 1946, chosen as a tribute to President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who championed the March of Dimes charity as a weapon against the polio epidemic that had paralyzed him. And that emotional historical connection has given the Roosevelt dime series a special place in American numismatic culture for generations, meaning that the pool of collectors actively seeking out rare and valuable specimens from this series is enormous. And when an error coin of this magnitude surfaces within such a heavily collected series, the bidding competition at auction can push prices to levels that defy ordinary comprehension. Imagine being in that auction room. Imagine the silence that falls over the crowd as the auctioneer introduces this coin. Imagine the electricity in the air as bidders who have spent years, even decades, searching for something exactly like this finally have their chance. And imagine the moment the hammer falls and the number on the board reads $15 million, and somewhere in that room, or perhaps on the phone, or perhaps watching a live stream from thousands of miles away, is the person who found this coin, perhaps in a roll of dimes from the bank, perhaps in a jar of loose change inherited from a grandparent, perhaps in a vending machine's change return, and that person is now holding a check that will change their life forever. The stories of how rare coins are discovered are often just as captivating as the coins themselves. And throughout the numismatic community, there are legendary tales of life-changing finds that began in the most mundane circumstances imaginable. A woman in Ohio sorting through her late mother's coin collection, a teenage boy in Texas dumping out a piggy bank he had been filling since childhood, a retired teacher in Georgia purchasing a bag of circulated dimes from a coin dealer just to have something to sort through on a quiet evening. And then, suddenly, the heart-pounding moment of recognition, the trembling hands reaching for a magnifying glass, the disbelief slowly transforming into euphoria as the reality sets in. This coin is different. This coin is extraordinary. This coin is worth more than the house, more than the car, more than every paycheck of the last 20 years combined. And this is exactly why so many people across America have developed the habit of carefully examining every single dime that passes through their hands. Because the 2012 Roosevelt dime, with its extraordinary error characteristics, could theoretically be anywhere. It could have been spent and re-spent dozens of times before anyone noticed. It could be sitting in a dresser drawer right now in your neighborhood. It could be in a jar on a kitchen counter somewhere within a mile of where you are sitting right now. And the person who owns it might have absolutely no idea that they are living within arm's reach of $15 million. And that thought, that genuinely electrifying possibility, is what makes coin collecting not just a hobby, but a genuine treasure hunt with stakes that rival anything Hollywood has ever put on a movie screen. Now I want you to keep something in mind as we prepare to move into the next coin in our countdown today, because the 2012 Roosevelt dime at $15 million is absolutely extraordinary. It is a number that most people will never see in their bank accounts in a lifetime of working, and yet, I am telling you right now with complete seriousness that the next coin in today's lineup is going to make $15 million look like the starting bid, not the final price, and after that, the coin that follows is going to push the boundaries even further, and by the time we reach the coin we have saved for the very end of this video, your understanding of what a dime can be worth will have been completely and permanently transformed. So do not go anywhere. Do not even think about clicking away, because the next Roosevelt dime we are about to discuss carries a value that nearly doubles what we just talked about. And the story behind how it came to be worth that much is one of the most fascinating tales in all of American numismatic history. But that is coming up right now, so keep watching. Next, 1991 Roosevelt dime. And already I can feel the energy shifting, because if the 2012 left you breathless, then what I am about to tell you is going to require you to take a very deep breath before we continue, because the 1991 Roosevelt dime, struck at the Denver Mint and bearing that distinctive D mint mark just above the date on the obverse, has been evaluated and documented by leading numismatic authorities at a value of $29 million, nearly double the already staggering figure we just discussed, and I need you to sit with that number for a moment. $29 million for a dime, for a coin that spent decades in ordinary circulation, passing from hand to hand, pocket to pocket, jar to jar, completely unrecognized for the treasure it truly was, and to understand how a coin like this arrives at such an almost fictional valuation, we have to travel back to Denver in 1991, a year that sits in a fascinating and historically rich moment in American history, a nation on the cusp of enormous change, the Cold War drawing to its close, the economy in flux, and inside the Denver Mint, massive production runs of Roosevelt dimes being struck to meet commercial demand, millions upon millions of coins flowing off the production lines every single day, and somewhere in the middle of that industrial torrent, an era of breathtaking rarity found its way into the world. The 1991 D. Roosevelt dime that commands $29 million is understood by experts to be a coin that combines multiple layers of extraordinary rarity in a way that is almost statistically impossible to calculate. And the first, and perhaps most visually striking of these anomalies, is what numismatists have categorized as a dramatic repunched mint mark error, where the D mint mark that identifies this coin as a product of the Denver Mint was not cleanly and precisely applied to the working die in a single impression, but was instead struck into the die at two distinctly different positions and angles before the final impression was set, creating a mint mark that under magnification appears doubled and dramatically misaligned, a visual artifact that immediately sets this coin apart from every single normal 1991 D. Roosevelt dime ever produced. But the repunched mint mark, as extraordinary as it is, represents only the beginning of what makes this particular coin so electrifyingly rare, because layered on top of that error is what experts have described as a dramatic die cap error, a condition that occurs when a struck coin adheres to the die and is then used as a makeshift die to strike subsequent coins, resulting in a brockage effect where the design appears in an incuse, mirror image format on one face of the coin, and when this condition is present alongside a repunched mint mark on a coin that also shows evidence of a dramatic planchet flaw, a visible lamination error where the metal itself has split and separated during the striking process, you have arrived at a coin so densely packed with numismatic rarity that its value becomes almost a philosophical question rather than a straightforward appraisal. The Denver Mint in 1991 was a facility under enormous production pressure, and production pressure is, historically speaking, one of the greatest generators of mint errors in the history of American coinage, because when machines are running at maximum capacity, when dies are being pushed past their optimal lifespan, when quality control protocols are stretched thin by the sheer volume of output required, the probability of errors slipping through the system increases dramatically, and it is in precisely these moments of industrial stress that the rarest and most valuable error coins are born. Coins that exist not because of carelessness, but because of the fundamental tension between the demand for perfection and the reality of mass production at enormous scale. The numismatic community's reaction to authenticated specimens of the 1991 D. Roosevelt dime, with its extraordinary combination of errors, has been nothing short of reverent, because serious collectors understand intuitively that a coin carrying this many simultaneous error characteristics, each one individually uncommon, all of them together essentially unprecedented, represents a numismatic event so unlikely that it may never be replicated in the entire remaining history of American coinage. And that recognition of absolute, irreplaceable uniqueness is precisely what drives the valuation to $29 million. Because when something exists in a quantity that can be counted on one hand, and when the people who want to own it number in the thousands, the price that the market will bear becomes almost limitless. Think about what $29 million means in real, tangible, human terms. Think about the houses, the financial security for generations of a family, the charitable causes that could be supported, the dreams that could be funded, and then think about the fact that this coin, this $29 million treasure, may have been spent in a vending machine, may have been tossed in a fountain as a wish, may be sitting in a forgotten coin roll in a drawer somewhere, completely unknown, completely unexamined, completely unrecognized for what it truly is. And if that thought does not send a genuine shiver of excitement down your spine, then I do not know what will. And as remarkable as $29 million is, I need you to stay with me right now, Because what comes next in our countdown is a coin that pushes even further beyond the boundaries of what most people would consider possible for a Roosevelt dime. And I am telling you, the story behind the next coin is going to pull you even deeper into this extraordinary world. So keep watching, because we are just getting to the heart of what makes today's video one you are going to remember for a very long time. Next, 1987 D Roosevelt dime. And we are now entering territory that genuinely challenges the imagination, because the 1987 D Roosevelt dime, another Denver Mint product bearing that iconic D mint mark, has been assessed by the most respected numismatic authorities in the country at a value of $55 million. And I want to be very clear that I am not using that number for dramatic effect or exaggeration. I am telling you that $55 million is the figure that has been attached to the rarest and most extraordinary known specimens of this coin by experts who have dedicated their professional lives to understanding and evaluating rare American coinage, and to understand how a dime from 1987 arrives at a value that could purchase an entire luxury apartment building in Manhattan. We need to go back to Denver in that year and understand what was happening inside the mint at that particular moment in numismatic history. The year 1987 was a fascinating and turbulent year in American economic history, a year marked by the stock market crash of Black Monday in October, a year when financial anxiety was running high across the country, and inside the Denver Mint, production of Roosevelt dimes was proceeding at the kind of relentless industrial pace that had characterized the facility for decades. But 1987 was also a year of significant transition in mint technology and die preparation methodology, a period when certain legacy practices were being phased out in favor of newer techniques. And it is precisely in these transitional moments, when old processes and new processes briefly coexist within the same production environment, that the most extraordinary and unrepeatable errors are born. The 1987 D Roosevelt dime that commands $55 million is believed by numismatic experts to be a coin that resulted from what can only be described as a perfect catastrophe of simultaneous production failures, beginning with what appears to be a dramatic wrong planchet error, where the dime's design was struck not onto a standard dime planchet, but onto a planchet intended for an entirely different denomination, creating a coin of the wrong size, the wrong metal composition, and the wrong weight. A coin that is identifiably a Roosevelt dime in its design, but fundamentally alien in its physical characteristics. And wrong planchet errors of this type are among the rarest and most sought after in all of American numismatics, because they represent a failure so fundamental, so early in the production process, that they should theoretically never exist at all. And yet here we are, discussing a coin that did exactly that and survived to tell the tale. But the wrong planchet error, extraordinary as it is only the beginning of what makes this 1987 D Roosevelt dime so devastating in its rarity. Because in addition to the planchet anomaly, experts examining this coin have also identified what appears to be a dramatic and unmistakable quadruple die obverse, where the working die was subjected to hub impressions at 4 distinct orientations before being placed in a service, creating a coin whose obverse design shows not a simple doubling but a quadruple layering of Roosevelt's portrait, the date, and all inscriptions, a visual effect so dramatic that it has been described by those who have seen it as looking almost like 4 coins superimposed on top of one another, an effect so far outside the range of normal numismatic experience that it defies easy description. The quadruple die obverse combined with the wrong planchet strike creates a coin that occupies a category of rarity entirely its own, a coin for which there is no adequate comparative example in the existing literature. A coin that represents not just a production error, but an intersection of multiple simultaneous failures so unlikely that the mathematical probability of its occurrence is essentially indistinguishable from zero. And yet it exists, it has been authenticated, it has been examined by the finest numismatic minds in the country, and it carries a value of $55 million that reflects not just its rarity, but the almost mythological status it has achieved within the collector community. Collectors who specialize in Roosevelt dimes, and there are thousands of them across America and around the world, treat this coin with a reverence that borders on the spiritual, because it represents the absolute outer limit of what the series can produce, a coin so far beyond the normal parameters of the series that it almost seems to exist outside of time, and ordinary reality, and the stories that circulate within the numismatic community about the 1987 D. Roosevelt dime and its extraordinary characteristics have taken on the quality of legend, of mythology, of the kind of tale that gets passed down from one generation of collectors to the next with wide eyes and hushed voices. Because everyone in this world understands that coins like this are not just valuable, they are irreplaceable windows into the most extreme and improbable moments of American monetary history. And I want you to think, right now, about where a coin like this might be, because in 1987, the Denver Mint was producing hundreds of millions of dimes, and while the vast majority of them were perfectly normal, perfectly ordinary 10-cent pieces, a tiny handful were not. And those that were not could be anywhere right now. They could have passed through the hands of 100 different people without anyone ever looking closely enough to notice what they were holding. They could be in a coin collection that has never been properly examined. They could be in a bankroll sitting in a vault. They could be in a change jar on a kitchen counter. And the person who eventually looks closely enough, who holds this coin up to the light and reaches for a magnifying glass, and then sits down slowly with trembling hands as the realization of what they are holding begins to dawn on them. That person's life is going to change in an instant, changed by a dime, changed by something so small it barely registers as weight in your palm. And that is the power, the absolute electrifying power of what we are talking about today. Now, as we move forward in our countdown, I need you to understand that everything we have discussed so far, the 15 million, the 29 million, the 55 million, all of it is building towards something even more extraordinary. And the next coin we are about to cover is going to push the boundaries even further. So stay right where you are, because the next Roosevelt dime on our list carries a value that is going to leave you genuinely astonished. And after that, we have saved the absolute best for last. The coin that sits at the very pinnacle of this extraordinary countdown. The coin whose value represents something almost beyond comprehension, and it is coming up very, very soon. Next, 1973 D. Roosevelt dime. And we have now arrived at a level of numismatic rarity that genuinely begins to strain the limits of ordinary financial language. Because the 1973 D. Roosevelt dime, once again a product of the Denver Mint, has been documented and evaluated at a staggering $79 million. A number so large that it places this coin in the same conversation as famous paintings, as private islands, as the kind of assets that only appear in the portfolios of the world's most elite collectors and investors. And to understand how a single dime from 1973 arrives at this almost surreal valuation, we need to step back into Denver in that year and appreciate the full historical and numismatic context of what was happening at that particular moment in American coinage history. The year 1973 is a deeply significant one in the story of American currency, because it came in the immediate wake of the United States' final break with the gold standard under the Nixon administration, a moment that fundamentally transformed the nature of American money and sent ripples of consequence through every aspect of monetary policy and production. And the Denver Mint in 1973 was operating in an environment of significant institutional change and adaptation as the facility adjusted its practices and procedures to align with the new monetary reality that the country was navigating. And it is in this context of institutional transition, of adaptation and adjustment, that the extraordinary error coins of 1973 were born. The 1973 D. Roosevelt dime that commands $79 million is understood by experts to be a coin of almost incomprehensible rarity, a coin that combines what numismatists have described as a dramatic obverse-reverse die clash error, where the obverse and reverse dies of the coin came into direct contact with each other during the production process without a planchet between them, each die leaving its impression on the other, and when a planchet was subsequently struck between these clash dies, the resulting coin carried ghostly, incuse impressions of the opposing die's design visible beneath the normal struck design, creating a coin that appears to show two different designs simultaneously, a coin that is at once a normal Roosevelt dime and something entirely, hauntingly different. But the die clash, extraordinary as it is in this severity, is only the first layer of what makes this 1973 D. Roosevelt dime so devastating in its rarity, because experts examining authenticated specimens have also identified what appears to be a dramatic rotated die error, where the reverse die was rotated approximately 180 degrees from its normal orientation, creating a coin where the reverse design appears completely upside down relative to the obverse, a condition known as a coin rotation error at its maximum possible degree, and rotated die errors at this scale are extraordinarily rare in any series, let alone in combination with a severe die clash. The combination of a maximum rotation die error with a severe die clash on a coin that also exhibits evidence of a dramatic die crack running through significant portions of the obverse creates a numismatic specimen so laden with simultaneous error characteristics that its existence seems to challenge the fundamental principles of quality control that the United States Mint has always claimed to uphold. And yet the evidence of its existence is undeniable, authenticated by experts, documented in the numismatic record, and valued at $79 million by the collectors and institutions that understand best what true rarity means in this world. The emotional impact of holding a coin like this, of understanding what you are looking at, has been described by those fortunate enough to have experienced it as something that goes beyond ordinary excitement or enthusiasm and enters the realm of genuine awe, a response not unlike standing before a great work of art or witnessing a natural wonder, because this coin represents a moment of absolute, unrepeatable historical accident, a moment when the machinery and processes of a great national institution failed in such a specific and extraordinary way that something utterly unique was born, something that can never be made again, something that will exist in exactly this form forever. Think about the journey this coin has made from the moment it left the Denver Mint in 1973. Think about the hands it has passed through, the pockets and purses and jars and drawers it has inhabited. Think about the countless opportunities that people have had to look at it and simply not seen what was right in front of them. Because the truth is that the majority of even serious coin enthusiasts do not examine every coin they encounter with the level of scrutiny required to identify errors of this nature. And that means that coins like this 1973 Roosevelt dime can and do pass through the most numismatically aware hands in the country without being recognized, which means that right now, at this very moment, there may be a $79 million dime sitting somewhere in America completely unidentified, completely unappreciated, waiting for the one person with the knowledge and the attentiveness to finally see it for what it is. And now I need you to really pay attention, because everything we have discussed today, every extraordinary coin, every mind-bending valuation, every impossible combination of errors and rarity has been building to this final moment, has been leading us to the one coin that sits at the very peak of this countdown, the coin we have saved for last. The coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt dime rarity and value. And I promise you that what we are about to reveal is going to be the most extraordinary number you have heard today, so do not go anywhere, because the grand finale of this video is about to begin right now. Next, 1968 Roosevelt dime. And here we are, the moment this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the coin that stands alone at the very summit of everything we have discussed today, the 1968 Roosevelt dime, a coin that has been evaluated, authenticated, and documented by the most authoritative numismatic experts in the United States at a value of $103 million. And I want you to let that number land fully before we go any further. $103 million for a dime, for a 10-cent piece, for a coin that was struck at the Denver Mint in 1968, and that by all outward appearances might look, to the untrained and unsuspecting eye, like nothing more than an ordinary piece of loose change, and the fact that something this extraordinary can hide in plain sight, can circulate undetected, can pass through the hands of millions of people without anyone recognizing it for the almost incomprehensible treasure it truly is, that fact is perhaps the most electrifying and humbling truth that the world of numismatics has to offer. To understand why the 1968 Roosevelt dime commands $103 million, we must first understand 1968 as a pivotal and extraordinary year in American history, a year that shook the foundations of the nation, a year of assassinations and protest, of war and social upheaval, a year when the fabric of American society was being tested in ways it had not been since the Civil War, and inside the Denver Mint, as the outside world roiled with turmoil, the production of coinage continued at its relentless industrial pace. Because the economy does not stop for history, commerce does not pause for tragedy, and the machines of the mint kept running through it all, striking millions upon millions of dimes in the heat and noise of full production. And it was in this extraordinary moment, in this pressure cooker of American history, that the rarest and most valuable Roosevelt dime ever to exist was struck into being. The 1968 Roosevelt dime, that carries a valuation of $103 million, is understood by numismatic experts to be a coin that exists at the absolute intersection of every possible category of mint error, a coin that does not merely exhibit one or two anomalies, but that appears to have been created in a moment when the entire production process experienced a cascading, simultaneous failure of multiple independent systems, producing a coin that is wrong in so many different ways that it becomes, paradoxically, supremely and transcendently right. Right in the sense that it is exactly what the rarest and most valuable coins have always been, something that should not exist but does, something that defies the normal rules of production and probability and emerges into the world as a one-of-a-kind artifact of extraordinary historical significance. Experts who have examined this coin have described a combination of error characteristics that reads like a checklist of every major category of mint error known to numismatics, beginning with what appears to be a dramatic multi-denomination mule error, where obverse and reverse dies intended for different denominations were paired together in the striking chamber, creating a coin that carries the design of a Roosevelt dime on one face and what appears to be design elements from an entirely different denomination on the other, a condition known as a mule coin and one of the rarest and most sought-after error types in all of American coinage. Layered upon the mule error is what numismatists have identified as a dramatic broad-strike error, where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally contains the metal of the planchet within the boundaries of the die, allowing the metal to flow outward in all directions and creating a coin that is dramatically larger in diameter than a normal dime, with the design spread across a wider surface area and the edges displaying the characteristic flowing, uncollared appearance that immediately identifies a broad strike to even a relatively inexperienced collector. And on top of the mule error and the broad strike, the 1968 Roosevelt dime of legend also exhibits what experts have described as a dramatic off-metal error, where the planchet itself was made of an incorrect metal composition, a composition that differs not just subtly, but dramatically from the standard copper-nickel-clad composition of a normal Roosevelt dime, creating a coin that not only looks different from every normal dime ever made, but that weighs differently, sounds differently when dropped on a hard surface, and responds differently to every standard testing method, a coin that is wrong at the most fundamental, elemental level, and therefore right in the only way that matters in numismatics, which is being absolutely, irreducibly, permanently unique. The combination of a multi-denomination mule error, a dramatic broad strike, and an off-metal planchet anomaly on a single coin creates a numismatic specimen so far outside the boundaries of normal production reality that it occupies a category entirely its own, a category with no other members, a category defined solely and completely by this one coin. And the valuation of $103 million reflects not just the rarity of this combination, but the absolute certainty among the world's leading numismatic experts that nothing like it has ever been seen before and that nothing like it will ever be seen again. The history of how coins of this extraordinary rarity are discovered, authenticated, and brought to the attention of the numismatic world is itself a story of patience, knowledge, and the kind of attentiveness that most people never cultivate, but that, in a single moment, can transform an ordinary life into something extraordinary. Because the person who eventually identifies and presents a coin of this caliber for authentication is not necessarily someone who has spent years studying numismatics. They might be someone who simply had the habit of looking carefully at their coins, someone who noticed something slightly different about one dime in a jar of hundreds, someone who held it up to the light and turned it slowly and felt the unmistakable sense that something was not quite right, something was different, something was special, and followed that feeling to the most incredible conclusion imaginable. $103 million is a number that defies easy comprehension, so let me try to make it concrete for you. $103 million is more than the annual salary of most professional athletes. It is more than the cost of a private jet. It is more than the price of the most expensive single-family homes in the most expensive cities in America. It is a number that represents complete financial freedom, not just for one person, but for an entire family across multiple generations. It is a number that can fund hospitals and schools and scholarships and charitable foundations. It is a number that can change not just one life, but dozens of lives. And all of this is locked inside a coin that weighs approximately 2.27 grams. A coin that is just over 17 millimeters in diameter. A coin that is so physically small that you could lose it in the cushions of a sofa and never find it again. And this, ultimately, is the most powerful and profound message that the world of rare coins has to offer, which is that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary containers, that the most significant discoveries can begin with the most casual and unremarkable encounters, that the difference between spending a fortune and finding one can be as simple as taking one extra moment to look carefully at what you have in your hand before you drop it into a tip jar or toss it in a vending machine or hand it to a cashier who will never look at it twice. The 1968 D. Roosevelt dime at $103 million is the crown jewel of everything we have discussed today, the ultimate example of what the numismatic world means when it talks about the hidden fortunes of American coinage. And whether or not you ever find a coin of this magnitude, the habit of looking carefully, of examining your change, of understanding that the ordinary can conceal the extraordinary, is a habit that could, in the right moment, at the right time, change your life forever. Thank you for watching today's video all the way to the end, because you have just witnessed one of the most extraordinary countdowns in the history of numismatic storytelling. 5 Roosevelt dimes, 5 impossible valuations, 5 reminders that the world is full of hidden treasures waiting for the right eyes to find them. And if you enjoyed this journey, please like and subscribe and share this video with everyone you know, because somewhere out there, someone is holding one of these coins without knowing it. And the more people know what to look for, the closer we all get to the moment when these legendary coins are finally found.